This is Factual America. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood, and I'm on a quest to discover the real America by interviewing the individuals driving a different narrative. This week, we welcome Max Horder to the show. Max is a senior fellow at the Network Contagion Research Institute. Armed with a PhD in anthropology from Princeton, Max has been documenting the rise of Luigiism in the aftermath of the murder of insurance CEO Brian Thompson in December 2024. As Max tells us, not only has Luigi Mangione become a cause celeb and social media darling in certain online worlds, but his rise is also emblematic of increasing appetite on the left for political violence, including the assassination of the U.S. president. Stay tuned. Max Horder, welcome to Factual America. How are things with you?
Things are very good, Matthew. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Just for our listeners and viewers, this is a bit of a departure. I think we gave you a heads up. We at Factual America have been looking at America through the lens of documentary film that, as I've discovered a while back, certainly has its limits, as you can imagine, and especially when it comes to this topic that we'll be discussing. So we are expanding the reach of our podcast, and the topics kind of remain the same, but we are inviting keen observers of America onto the show. And I happened to be listening to a podcast over the summer. I'll be upfront. It was the Spectator magazine here in the UK, their Americano podcast, and heard Max talk about a very interesting issue of left-wing violence, and thought we needed to get him on. So thanks again, Max, for agreeing to come on. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matthew.
Okay, so I think one thing, at least in one of your articles, and we'll link to these in the show notes, I think you were saying with regards to one of your first pieces, you had a piece in the Spectators as well, or more than one now, and kind of we're hoping, I think it was the polite, gentlemanly thing to say, that is say you hope this was kind of a one-off thing and this sort of stuff. But the thought that popped up in my head as soon as I heard you, and why I thought, well, once we launch this new format, we got to get you on, is that unfortunately, this is going to strike again. This is going to this is growing, this is happening. And in fact, it's no longer beneath the radar screen. We're seeing, even us old folks who are not all that au fait with everything that's going on social media and stuff, are coming into it. I think you were even mentioning this thing that we can discuss later that even reared its head yesterday. So I guess the first question then, well, with all that rambling, what is Luigiism? And what's driving it, and how did it get started? So maybe kind of give us a synopsis of what is this phenomenon that is Luigiism that you've documented and have been studying.
Luigiism is a term we've coined to describe something that's been happening over particularly past year, which is very strange and very disconcerting as well. The story really begins last year, when a young chap called Luigi Mangione went to New York City, and he went and killed the CEO of United Healthcare, called Brian Thompson, right in the middle of Manhattan. Now, it was shocking enough for him to have done that. Right. And I think even at the beginning, everyone was deeply disturbed by it. What became more disturbing was the way in which the reception of Luigi Mangione went to a kind of cultural icon online, right, really quickly. Almost everyone I know had a strong opinion about it, both sort of pro and against him. Right. In places where you would never expect the condoning what is really just a form of political murder on the streets of New York. So he becomes very famous. He becomes sort of infamous as well. And he generates this incredible controversy online, because what we see within the spaces of days, weeks, months after his killing of Brian Thompson, this unbelievable sort of network of memes and of cultural discussions, narratives about Luigi Mangione. Obviously, it very rapidly got linked to Luigi, the character from the Nintendo game, and the word Luigi, and increasingly the sort of the verb to Luigi someone becomes a shorthand for this very particular form of political violence. So he's become an icon. He's become a kind of saint, of a kind of modern Che Guevara figure,
right.
For the act of killing a corporate elite, so to speak. So that's where it came from, and the sort of Luigiism as a way of describing all of the ways that goes together, and like you said at the beginning, seems to just come up every few months.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem to be going anytime soon.
Right. Yeah, he's definitely this social media sensation, cause celeb in a way. I mean,
Absolutely.
Despite my comments about my abilities and of using the social media and the internet, I will say I have been following this almost from the very beginning, and not in the same way that maybe you might follow the news. I just so happened to come across a tweet as it happened, and not about one of the ones that were lionizing him. I don't know if you're familiar with Walter Kern, but he's this author, literary critic. He's got a pretty big profile in the last year or two, but he's been calling it from the very beginning, right? So he'll put a tweet out and say, within a week, Luigi will become a verb. Sure enough, a week later, Luigi's become a verb. There will be a perp walk. This perp walk will be a big news because they will orchestrate a perp walk. Now, I don't know. I don't think he's trying to get into some sort of conspiracy theory. But what is interesting is that, now he's been calling it from the very beginning. Now, neither you nor I know what Walter's seeing, except he's saying that having been an author and a novelist helps him understand the narrative that's coming along with this. But maybe you can conjecture not specifically what's going on in his head, but what do you think he's picked up on that many of us hadn't? And maybe that gets to kind of the research that you're picking up on in terms of having a finger on the pulse of a part of American society.
Absolutely. Well, I think from his side, I think you're certainly right to note that there's something about the artists or that can perceive, like quite intuitively, that what's going on here with Luigi Mangione is so much more than even just an act of violence. So Luigi represents something for people, and that's why I think he so resembles a saint. And I'm sure you can, the images, one of the many images of Luigi,
icons with the nimbus and everything. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's no coincidence. I mean, every society, every culture, I speak here sort of as an anthropologist,
right,
requires their folk heroes, their deities. I mean, obviously, when I was a bit younger, you had the leader of the Zapatistas was like the famous left. I can't remember his name. Subcomandante Marcos.
Oh,
was his
name. Yes.
In the 90s,
yeah,
he had a pipe. And then obviously he was kind of downstream from Che Guevara. That was huge. Right. And so these kind of essentially usually younger looking kind of men are symbols for generations and how generations feel and how they articulate what they mean and what they think is right or wrong. The troubling thing about Luigi is precisely that he wasn't overthrowing a dictatorship or trying to. Right. He killed a guy on the street because he was a C-level at an insurance company. Right. So that itself, from a purely kind of the way you can interpret these things is really powerful.
Yeah. What just occurred to me, and to be fair to. Hope one day to get him on, actually, but Walter Kern was that I think he described it as the first AI political murder or something, like AI generated. Like if you were to just put in the right prompt, it would have created the Luigi thing. It would have said, find yourself a good-looking young man who's, who go down the list, and then this is how the plot will work, and it is following this narrative.
That's right.
Now,
that's right.
How does this? So, I guess how does this differ from right-wing violence? And I guess maybe one way to look at it, start from we've had them on, we've had the directors on, we've had loads of docs looking at right-wing violence, right? Mm-hmm. Is that more focused? I was going to say, it's not even upheaval. It's more of a view of a belief of protecting the system, isn't it? And in the U.S. we see it mainly in like the militias, and and it's well documented. We got Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City and these sort of things. Is that what we're talking about when traditionally we've thought about right-wing violence?
More or less. So a lot of what we're discussing in terms of these violence really hinges on a sociological, psychological characteristic called authoritarianism.
Right.
And people, and over the course, particularly after the Second World War, there was a lot of research about what this thing is. Basically, a lot of people after the war wanted to explain why people were Nazis, basically. Why did they follow, or Francoists, or why do people follow these kind of militias and these kind of right-wing ideologies? They come up with this idea of authoritarianism. And since then, it really was just something that people looked at on the right wing. They said the right wing people are authoritarianism. How do we explain that? Sort of why are people not more liberal, or what causes them to be more authoritarian? Now, there was obviously a kind of black hole here, which was, it's clear to a lot of people that there are also left-wing authoritarians, people that are either identify with or believe in very particular kind of left-wing, broadly defined policies. But also very authoritarian when it comes to telling people what to do, to shutting people up, and lots of other things. So that was kind of left. People will disagree. Some people say it was consciously ignored in the universities.
Right.
Other people say it's actually because we find it harder to measure. Generally, the consensus now is that it does exist. Well, enough people believe it does exist, and you can measure it. Particularly a scholar called Costello, who's really helped to create the way of measuring this. Essentially, you can look at certain people and say these are forms of left-wing violence as well. Like you said, the difference is authoritarians on the right tend to want to hold on to political order, so they're about defending what exists. Whereas on the left, it's about sort of upending the order. It's about against convention, against hierarchy. Even if they're going to put a new hierarchy in their place, there's something about shutting people up and trying to remove things. With Luigi, it wasn't in defense of sort of the economy. It was sort of against the system as it existed.
Yeah.
And that's why we can talk about in a sec, the research suggests that support for Mangione does correlate more strongly with people who exhibit those kind of characteristics.
Okay, so then one last thing on sort of the right wing, a couple last things on sort of the right wing side, which is we won't go into detail, and it's well documented, as you noted. I think in one of your pieces you say it's very much very nationalistic, sort of hatred of immigrants and outsiders, at least the way it's described. Messianic hero. I think you say it's no surprise who they might be referring to. I mean, I imagine a lot of this academic research kind of overlaps with the Trump is a fascist crowd, maybe potentially.
Very much so. Very much so.
And how much of
a lot of ink has been spilled.
Yeah, exactly. And how much is it really? I mean, okay, we're not far removed from some. Would you consider Jan 6 an example of right-wing violence? Is that in your mind, or is that something different?
Jan 6 was also just, from what I remember of the time, it was also just a kind of crazy situation. I mean, sometimes it's hard. It would be interesting to sort of understand these people and speak to them. And I haven't followed so much, what they think and what they do.
Right.
I think in some ways, yes. I mean, yes, apart from when you have those particular moments. I mean, it depends on how many people support January 6th and all the conspiracies that go around it. But I think probably, yes, it probably would fall broadly into that, that category.
But then what are other examples? Things like some of the stuff I mentioned, Oklahoma City bombing, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to this, people trying to understand right-wing violence, there's been, as I said, a lot of ink spilled around. For example, I wrote my original research on Brexit, and the literature around Brexit, what people talk about was this is like the new fascism, and this is racism, this is fascism, or at the very least, this is very kind of heavy right-wing authoritarianism.
Right.
So a lot of ink was spilled, sort of trying to call it that, partly to sort of remove its legitimacy, and partly because there were sort of some ways in which you could say it clearly in some ways was that. But I think, yeah, generally, and then after with Trump was kind of the big one. Trump is sort of the classic, right wing populist, right wing authoritarian, fascist in embryo kind of thing.
Right.
And there's
right.
again lots of ink spilled, lots of panic around that.
Yeah.
But then you see smaller things. You see there have been, and there continue to be many cases of right wing violence in America as well. It's not. It's not. I think that it's not that it doesn't exist. It's more that we're also seeing it from the left now as well, and that tells a bigger picture, which is things are falling apart.
Exactly, because there's some interesting things in your study we'll get to in a little bit, because I think besides your main points, there were some really interesting little details in some of the surveys you did that I found very interesting. But so let's focus more on this left-wing variant, because that's what the whole point of bringing you on is about, is, as you've described, I think, in a few pieces, it's the Loch Ness left-wing violence is the Loch Ness monster of your field. Is it right to say it tends to be more focused now on assassination? Is that kind of what you're seeing, or does Antifa get wrapped up in this at all, or is that kind of its own thing?
I would say so. It's about these kind of, when these things happen, they're quite still, thank God, quite rare. We do have these shootings and things, but really we're trying to understand broadly how people feel about them in general, because it doesn't take more than a few people to do it. But what really is concerning is there what is called permission structures, which is, if you think about it like this, if you go to a place where people all say don't do that, you're probably not going to do it. But if you go to a place, and by place I mean now largely online,
right,
forums, Twitter, everything, where there's a growing sense that this thing is okay and maybe a good thing to do, something that you would praise people. It doesn't take that many people in that environment to then act on it. So really, it's, again, these sporadic acts of violence are terrible. What the concerning thing is, why do so many people think it's okay? That's when it's that, and that's the thing that's changing. I don't remember even 5-10 years ago that people would say you're allowed to shoot people for being executives.
I know. I mean,
but now you've got a lot of people that say it's fine.
I'm not asking people to go. Well, I'm sure you'd be happy if they looked up your study and went into the details. But you have this range. We'll go and get into this more maybe more after the break. But you do this 1 to 7 range, and 1 is absolutely never justified, and then 2 through 7, 7 being perfectly justified to assassinate a president or a public figure or something, or go after Trump or Musk, as you were asking at the time. And that's a bit concerning, because even those people scoring 2 or 3, they have decided there could be a justified reason, right?
That's right.
But so just like with as you were describing with right wing, there are these 3 pillars that are sort of, is it fair to say, driving left wing? So I think one of them's kind of anti-conventionalism, maybe.
Right.
Is that right? Sort of repudiation of everything. Right. Is that one way?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And then
rejecting the conventions, rejecting the hierarchies, and a real strong tendency to shut people up.
So cancel culture in a form, right? Yeah. So very clamping down on dissent or anything that they find they're in disagreement with. Yeah, as you say, I think they see it. Anyone who disagrees with them, which is their sort of repudiation of everything, is immoral. Is that? I mean, it becomes almost a religious fervor for some of these people. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, one can't help but there are still some people on the left that sort of go down as both being very pro free speech and left wing, but generally speaking, now in the American kind of cultural world, it does seem that free speech now, so if you care about free speech, if you talk about free speech, it's sort of seen as a right wing thing. Partly that's because, for various reasons, people have just associated it with the right, but also partly because the very characteristics of left-wing authoritarianism that we are seeing being picked up, that's part of the general consensus, is that it's in that nature to be more allowing of that kind of censorship.
I mean, I think that's very fair. I think actually, if you go far enough back, because I'm older than you, I think left wing was often strongly free speech,
Right,
right?
right,
You know, I mean,
right,
not right,
right.
shouldn't you? Correct is what I should say. Um, but I think also, if you want to say why, and we're not here to talk about why Trump did or didn't, why he won in the presidential election, but there were a lot of people who feel strongly about free speech who never thought they'd be voting for Donald Trump, who I think
Right,
ended up pulling a lever for him when they went into that voting
right,
booth. And I think that's,
right.
and it's certainly true. I mean, you and I are both living in the UK at the moment. I mean, we've got a lot of things going on here, and certainly we get reminded of it
Mhm,
by people on the right in the US
mhm,
who are
mhm, mhm.
certainly
Right.
highlighting. And they're, we've got Farage was that yesterday? He was on Capitol Hill, I think, testifying, and
Yeah.
we've got JD Vance, who holidayed here, as we would
Mhm,
say, saying things. We've
mhm.
got I'm based up north in North Yorkshire, and we've got flags flying, and we've got walls being painted, and it's not getting much
Wow.
publicity, but it's certainly happening. And so
Mhm,
there is
mhm.
this underswell, but yeah, it does seem to be now associated with certainly much more strongly with the right.
I
Um,
think so.
but
I think
let's
with Trump on that,
go ahead.
I'll say with on Trump on that thing. I mean, it was very interesting to be in the US during that time and watching the election unfold, and to be studying various forms of
Right.
authoritarianism. It seems so interesting that Trump really. It wasn't exactly what he was saying; it was the fact that he was saying things which people know you're not allowed to say. I mean,
Right.
many
Right.
of the things that
Yeah.
were said
Yeah.
were quite outrageous. Even if you supported him, were quite outrageous
Yes.
and not very nice.
Yes.
But it
Yes.
was this fact that he was able to break this kind of this kind of very elaborate sort of code of speaking and talking and the way politicians act. He was so different from that, and he gave people sort of the ability to feel like they weren't going crazy for knowing that they couldn't really say
Right.
certain
Right.
things or articulate certain
Uh,
things. And it's the same, I think, now with this. We're seeing here with the flags with Nigel Farage. It's just this sense of no, kind of, we're not like we're aware you're telling us what we're allowed to say and not allowed to say,
yeah.
and we don't like you telling us what we're allowed to say or do, or like
Exactly.
not allowed to have the flag or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I think we're going to give our listeners and viewers a break. So just to say, we'll be right back with Max Horder, the senior fellow at the Network Contagion Research Institute. I think I forgot to mention that when we first came on, who's been documenting the rise of Luigiism and left-wing violence. Check out his various articles in The Spectator and elsewhere. We'll have links to them in the show notes. And while you're at it, why not subscribe or follow us? Please turn on your notifications to make sure you never miss one of our episodes. We'll be right back. Factual America is brought to you by Alamo Pictures, a London-based production company specializing in feature documentaries, factual television, and shorts about the U.S. Benefiting from an outsider's keen eye and years of stateside experience, Alamo's filmmakers explore topical, uniquely American stories from a sympathetic European perspective. The result is engaging cinema and television that defies stereotypes and helps audiences truly understand what makes America tick. Check out Alamo's website at alamopictures.co.uk to be the first to hear about new productions, festivals showing Alamo's films, and to connect with the team. Now back to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. I'm here with Max Horder, Senior Fellow at the Network Contagion Research Institute. We've been talking about left-wing violence, Luigi Mangione, free speech as of late. Maybe it's worth digging in if our listeners will bear with me. I am an economist by background, so I do kind of like my numbers and looking at studies. And you've done this, so the articles you've written, you've done. Well, maybe I should ask the question. This is all based on hard data, right? You've not
Right.
just observed. You've done the surveys. You've done a lot of very statistically rigorous things, to use the technical term, to try to document this. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. So at the NCRI, what we really try and do is we try to articulate what is happening or explain what is happening by a combination of showing what is happening, for example, in the social media ecosystem in terms of what people are saying, what's getting the engagement, and bringing that in with a psychological component, doing surveys of thousands of Americans, trying to understand really what they think. Because this is a big problem for, this is happening across America. I mean, everyone knows, more or less everyone knows who this guy is and has an opinion about it. So you want to really capture what's happening, particularly to younger people, to people of my generation, people below, and how they're feeling, because this is often what drives a lot of it.
So maybe walk us through some of the main findings, besides the fact that, I mean, broadly, and as it's in the articles and we've been discussing, we've seen this rise in, I guess, a tolerance, I guess, would be another way of saying it, for left-wing, for violence, and it tends to be more on the left, people who self-identify. So when you were asking these people, they were self-identifying as being center-left or center-right. Is that correct?
So in the surveys, there would have been questions about how they identify, but the questions we would have used particular ways of understanding where people sit by asking them a variety of questions that would link to, for example, the left-wing authoritarianism scale. So we would be able to say, for the people that score highly in these various beliefs, such as whether it's right or not to overthrow something, or whether it's right or not to shut someone down for saying something that's disagreeable, depends on the question. Then we could say, okay, for all those people that are essentially clearly categorized as left-wing authoritarian, how do they relate to these questions? How do they feel about justifying killing Donald Trump or killing Elon Musk or burning down Tesla, all these kinds of things?
Right. So, I mean, just amazing numbers that come out of this. So let's the main ones. Justification for murder of Donald. Well, let's start with Musk. Musk was big in the news at the time when you were doing this, so I know why you were.
That's right. That's right.
So, I mean, all respondents, 32%, 31 point, I think that's a 6, 30, so it's roughly 32, a third of the respondents, forget about where they are in the spectrum, thought that there could be some justification somewhere for murdering Elon Musk. Is that fair enough to say?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And that number is more than a third. It's like 30, round up, it's 39% for Trump, which is incredible.
Yeah. A lot of animosity towards both of them, I mean, particularly at that time, where they were just dominating the news headlines.
I mean, I was going to ask this later. Have you done a follow-up, or are you planning to do a follow-up on this?
We are planning on doing a follow-up. I imagine that the ones for Musk may probably change. I imagine for Trump, not so much.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
seems like the sort of polarization that's driving these feelings, and the other things we can talk about, the other characteristics that interlink, haven't been going anywhere. So I imagine they would be more or less the same.
But if we were to say, so let's focus then on Trump, because I granted Musk was right in, pardon for the expression, but he was in the crosshairs when you were doing, certainly back when you were doing this study. A good 56% of those that identify, or you were able to identify as being left of center, saw a justification, at least some justification for assassinating the sitting U.S. president. That's right. What?
It's very worrying.
Yeah, it is. I mean, what roughly? I mean, because I know, I know you made all the adjustments along with census data and everything to get a proper, to properly, address some of those issues with being representative and everything. I mean, what are we looking at in terms of? Well, if we're saying 38% of the U.S. population thinks that's, I mean, we're talking millions and millions of people I guess you would probably add, we're not saying that because they have this, that they're going to act this belief. It doesn't mean they're going to act on it, but they do see that there's justification for someone, right? That's right. But left of center, 56% say that is,
that's right.
So a majority say there could be some justification for murdering the sitting U.S. president. That's right. That's phenomenal.
It's very worrying.
Yeah.
It's very, and like you said, we're not saying that means that many people would want to do it or would do it. It's that many people at the very least don't say you shouldn't do that. Like, we would hope that everyone would say unequivocally in a democratic society, don't kill the president.
Yeah.
But to some degree, there is that much people that are saying, no, actually, we think that is somewhat justifiable. Generally speaking, when you have historical context, for example, of civil war, a lot of the time what happens is there's a feeling that one group is sort of taking over, and politics becomes a zero-sum game.
Right.
Only either they or us run the show, and if they run it, they're going to hurt us unless we run it and we hurt them first, or something like that. It seems like what's going on here is just there is this general sense that Trump, Elon, and the others, like, they are doing something terrible to America, and we have no control over what they're doing, and the only thing to stop them is to assassinate, or at least the feeling that if someone was to do that, it's not such a bad thing.
And I guess, I mean, did you, it's so, to me, it's pretty black and white. Is there not a justification? But you do have a scale. I mean, if you were to, I mean, if you said, oh, those people who put 2 or who scored 2 or 3, you don't count them, you're still looking at 10, 15, 20, a good quarter of the population at least who still thinks there's a more than just small justification for killing the U.S. president. The other thing that struck me,
I think
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's, what's so interesting about these large-scale survey things is that they tend to reflect or articulate what a lot of people feel. I mean, I know many people that, including in very prestigious institutions, that believe that it's okay to kill Donald Trump. I mean, it's very common, and so it's interesting to see the numbers play out with that intuition that the feeling amongst lots of people is. I mean, and it links back to what we were saying before, Matthew, which is that a part of this problem is if you truly believe that he's a fascist, right. It's not that bad. If someone said to you, it's 1933, Hitler's coming into power, is it okay to shoot him? Right. The answer is yes. Of course it is, because it's Hitler. So obviously, the more that the language goes towards that's what he is, then that sense of justification arises. And like I said, the feeling of powerlessness to do anything about it, that encourages, or that correlates largely with people feeling that it's okay to do this violence.
So while we're talking about this specific question survey, I mean, about 1/5 of right of center said it was justified.
Right.
So what was going on there? I mean, I would, or.
Good question. It'd be very interesting to dig deeper into what that particular group is thinking. I mean, there's a lot of, there is a sense even amongst people that are right of center that Donald Trump is a danger or worry or is doing something terrible to the Republican Party, or there are lots of conspiracies and allegations of various forms of corruption and so forth. So one could imagine that there would be at least 1/5 of people are like really unhappy even on the right. But like you said, this problem is it's more that like we're in a place where killing someone is considered, like you said, justifiable in some way. That's like you said, really the worry is that there's a sense in which politics is so disjointed from the rest of society, and it's so in its own world that there's nothing we can do. That maybe just killing someone is the only solution.
Right. And then the other thing I found interesting was your looking at the various factors that could you found some. To get geeky on everyone, you did some regression analysis, and you found some explanatory independent variables, right, that could explain why people feel the way they do, or there's certainly a strong correlation, and then you do the analysis, and it's predictive, if you will. I thought so. We obviously this left of center was very predictive, right? That was one of the main variables you found. Well, especially with Trump, it was less left of center, but more left. If you were left-wing authoritarian, you definitely strongly feel this way. Okay. And the locus of control. So if you feel like you don't have control, the system is keeping you from buying a house or struggling to make rent, you're living out of your, well, I don't know if you're living out of your car, but whatever, you don't have control, then you also feel this way. I think I don't think it showed up on the Trump one, but on the other questions, the other thing that struck me was the blue sky showed up as being very predictive, or blue ski, as some people call it. I think.
That's right.
I mean, and then that gets, I guess, to this point that you were seeing, and then you do also look at. You did this sort of just trawling of social media feeds and things like that, showing that it becomes is this sort of a bit of an echo chamber kind of phenomenon where everyone
Right.
and like you
Yeah.
said, if you no longer have the guardrails there saying it's not
That's
acceptable, you are surrounding yourself with people who believe just the same way you do.
Essentially.
Yeah.
I think what's very interesting about social media is even a few years ago, I did lots of research about Brexit, and even a few years ago on Twitter, it was a lot of this kind of anti-Brexit stuff on people tweeting about it, and from a very kind of pro-Remain, anti-Brexit. What happened is that Blue Sky sort of comes up, and then it seems like everyone sort of politically splits, and Twitter or X becomes either full of or associated with the right. Blue Sky comes more associated with the left. It's like the left-wing social media. So what you do is, it's hard to say whether it's self-selecting, like whether it's just left-wing authoritarian people go over there to Blue Sky and sort of hang out there, or whether there's something about this particular social media. But I think what you said is right. What happens is you create these environments on forms of social media, which are essentially just online communities of people, where everyone agrees with you. There's no one there saying like, don't do this, or this is bad, because everyone who disagrees doesn't really go there. And also because social media has become so polarizing and so aggressive, and so lots of people just don't want to tweet or don't talk about it. So you create these fake places where all of the emotional guardrails for telling people don't do this, they just kind of go. And then when you spend a lot of time there, you start thinking maybe it's normal to think this, maybe it's fine, and you start celebrating these things online, as we saw even recently as well.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, let's get on to that about some recent events. But before, I mean, I'm on Twitter. I mean, it is the Wild West nowadays, right? I mean, it's
right.
But it still has the different voices showing up. I think it's got first mover advantage. It's been around long enough. Some people are just stubborn. But yeah, I can only imagine that let's face it, the one person I don't know too many people on Blue Sky. The one person I met at a conference one time immediately, she's a pretty well-known journalist in this country, that's all I'll say. But immediately after the conference, the session we did, she said, so aren't you worried? I was like, well, he goes, well, that was the last election you're ever going to have as an American.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, surely Trump's not going to allow another election to be held. I'm like, what do that was, so anyway, unfortunately.
It's very interesting you say that, because it is just, I've heard that. I mean, I heard that, I think last week, someone saying that Trump is going to take power and stay in. But I've heard it from the beginning. And like you said, and I think this links to, because there will be people on the right that also believe this, but there are many people on the left that, like you said, people like her and others, particularly on particular social media forums like Blue Sky, they really believe that. And like, there's a real sense that this is an apocalyptic end of American civil society moment, unless someone can step in and just kill him, like in exactly the same way that Hitler couldn't be stopped until he died. It's that kind of thing. So it leads to terrible, terrible long-term effects.
I mean, I've got a short that's already written in my head and kind of written as a script, and I've been meaning to actually looking at this topic. This is a side note. I will be doing it soon about whether Trump is really a fascist, right? And I think because I keep saying, well, this has surely run its course, right? And then it never fails. Yeah. Like within a week, someone has got a meme, or someone, there's some demonstrations and there's people with Trump and swastikas around him and everything. And it's just like, it doesn't go away. And it's just, it's not at all. It is the top. It is a belief. He sends the troops into Washington, D.C. Whatever you think of that. I mean, immediately.
That's right.
Jackbooted thugs on the streets. Here we go. We told you. We told you, right?
Yeah.
And there's going to be someone with a Luigi sign, right? So, but yeah, back to Luigiism. I don't want to give him, Luigi Mangione, too much airtime, but this whole phenomenon. I mean, so we've had another shooting in the streets of New York. Well, a building in New York, this New York mass shooting, and resulted in certainly one of the deaths was this Wesley BlackRock CEO. I do actually think I might have met her in a previous life. But that was so. The act itself wasn't necessarily emblematic or a part of this, what we're talking about. Is that correct to say? But the reaction to it is.
As far as I still know, the killer had some kind of severe mental health issues, head injuries from football, and was aiming, which doesn't make it okay, obviously, but was aiming to shoot up in the NFL headquarters.
Right.
But he ended up shooting a number of people that were completely unrelated, including this poor victim. And like you said, the shooting itself was awful. What really stuck out though was on social media in the week or two following was a kind of nothing near as big as what happened with Luigi Mangione. I mean, we're talking much smaller, but it's more like a sort of ripple of a wave kind of thing.
Right.
We saw very similar language amongst people that it sort of varied. At first, it was. Oh no! This is all a conspiracy, and this killer he killed her on purpose, and it was to kill another sea level, just like Luigi, and they're covering it up because the media doesn't want everyone to know that there's like a revolt in the air and this kind of thing. That kind of like went away relatively quickly when people realized no, he was just mentally ill. But then it became something like, actually no, it was a mistake, but she still deserved it because she was the head of a large financial institution. She was working with a company which had jacked up rents for people and making people harder that were poorer. And so, and the phrase which really sort of apart from the Luigi'd verb, which was then kind of used a lot, she got Luigi'd and this kind of thing. CEO down became the new thing. CEO down, like this part of this same sense that sea-level people are worthy of violence because they are the ones responsible for the economic suffering of Americans.
And that bizarre sort of meme with the smiling star or something.
Yeah,
it's just
really, really weird.
Yeah,
weird.
I mean, as
really
I think as one of your pieces points out too, there's all this sort of this use of code is interesting too, right? Because there's also this plausible deniability. So I guess you can deny that you're actually calling for someone's death or assassination. But everyone knows it's wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We know what you mean by that. Certainly Luigi's, and I don't think there's no hiding.
Luigi.
Yeah. She's been Luigi'd. I mean, actually pictures of her online with that stamped across her. So this is, and then since we're here and it's the timing, any connections as far as you see, at least in what you know, with the recent Minneapolis shooting with the young man who killed two kids at the Catholic Church in Minneapolis?
Absolutely. So as far as I'm aware, there was no direct link to Luigi, and we didn't see that much coming out. There were lots of as far as I'm aware, lots of kind of particularly anti-Zionist things going around with him, and lots of other things like that. But to be honest, it seemed, we obviously picked it up very quickly and we sort of investigated. It seemed like this was a case of someone who had quite severe, again, mental health. I mean, it's difficult because some people would say Luigi Mangione himself, it seems unlikely that he himself suffered from the same kind of mental illness that both of the more recent killers did, which I think is why it was picked up as a kind of cultural icon rather than the kind of random killing. So I think in the most recent one, I think it was probably more, unfortunately, just the bad combination of mentally ill and access to firearms that led to this, rather than part of this kind of cultural Mangione ecosystem.
Right. No, fair enough. Because also the last thing I want to do is rush to judgment and say, oh, well, it's just because of this milieu that's been created. I mean, we've had mass shootings in the past, and we've had them,
unfortunately,
and unfortunately we'll probably have them again. But it's just interesting to note. I guess the one thing I also wanted to ask you, because what strikes me as someone who's a little kid, admittedly, but a little kid who used to watch the news and on a nightly basis in the in the mid 70s. I mean, how does this all differ, what we're seeing on the left with what because the 60s were quite a violent period. At least we felt like they were. In the early 70s. We had one of my first memories is like the Symbionese Liberation Army, and they kidnapped Patty Hearst, and it's these left-wing types, and we had all kinds of, again, in some ways, have been lionized, or you have people have different views. But we certainly had the Black Panthers, and we had this kind of things going on. So how does this differ, or is this
Absolutely.
or is this just a things go in cycles?
I think it is very different. Whether it will coalesce into something else in the next few decades is up for us all to find out. I think the difference is in the past, in the 60s and 70s, there were examples of violence, but they were generally tied to like group sort of ideological change, whether it was a kind of anti-colonial thing or it was a kind of anti-capitalist thing, or it was tied to like a vision.
Right.
And it was tied to an idea of what a better world would be. Even if that all kind of collapsed after the Soviet Union, even if many of these things sort of wore themselves out, there was a sense that we can create a better world by replacing the world we have with some new thing. It seems that now we're in this kind of late stage, very alienated, lonely sort of world in which there's violence, but no sort of reason. I mean, when Luigi Mangione killed Brian Thompson, I mean, there was a sense that Brian Thompson was sort of bad because he was an executive of a health insurance company, but there was no program this was part of to replace it with something else.
Right.
So it's not like we need to get rid of capitalism and put in socialism and that will be the solution.
Yeah.
It was just violence and a sense of like, he's bad, like whatever. And in some ways, Luigi Mangione, why I think he's such a cultural icon is because he reflects how people feel, which is everyone knows things aren't the best, but no one really knows kind of
what to do.
What else, you know? It's just what to do or how to feel or what to suggest at the end of it, you know. So I think that's why.
So on that note, I mean, where is this all headed, or where could it be heading? Because what strikes me, and I think you used the C word earlier, about a year or so ago, there was all this stuff. There were certain people going on, oh, we're headed for a civil war. We're definitely heading for a civil. And I thought it just seemed so overplayed, and it was kind of this reaction, kind of like some of the other stuff we're seeing. But a lot of the stuff you were documenting and showing in your study and seeing certainly sets the stage for that kind of, if things don't change. Right. I mean, where do you see things? If you have a crystal, well, I'll ask you to use a crystal ball. You may not want to use it. Then just give us an idea of where do you think this is heading, or where it will head if we don't or do something about it.
I think it's definitely heading in the wrong direction, in the sense that I think it definitely is moving towards greater polarization. Whether that would lead to a civil war, I mean, of course, we have to remember the US did have a civil war not that long ago in the kind of greater scheme of things.
Right.
But it was for very different reasons. And it seems that what's really going is both the main parties are becoming more attached to kind of the more extremes on each side, both the left and the right, which I think is largely also indicative of the fact that the country itself is so divided. It's been divided in both our lifetimes, but there wasn't, there's lots of really interesting research about, for example, who people would marry. And we've seen consistently that over the past decade, the willingness of people on certain forms of the political spectrum to marry people of the other side have gone consistently down. And you also see that in things like reflections of, do people have conversations or do they know them? The truth is that where people sit politically is often about, where they live, what education they had, and so forth. And we live in a world that's just very different. It's almost a society of two societies that have no means of communicating with each other anymore. And that's when it really, I don't think it will geographically split, but it will see more and more tension until America can find a way to have a category of American that everyone, or at least most people, want to feel part of. It seems right now, even being American feels kind of like a right-wing thing and not a left-wing thing. Like it seems these categories have changed. And that's also, that was true in Britain, right? Brexit was famously associated with the Union Jack and in a way that Remain and the sense of being part of Europe and something this global thing. Right. That polarization was then. It feels like in America you have a similar sort of, Democrats seem to be more associated with kind of more globalist institutions, globalist ways of thinking, and tend to be people that do travel more, whereas people on the right tend to be big upset. Same in Britain.
No, it's very interesting. I mean, we just, we haven't published it yet. There's a documentary on Pat Oliphant, the political cartoonist, and we had the director on. And because what struck me then there is he said, well, he came to this came in the 90s. He's from Australia, comes in the 60s and finds a very polarized America, which was great material for a political cartoonist. I think he has a comment in there that America's always been polarized, but it does strike me at the same time. I have to note, the thing that struck me also about that doc is that they're showing his political cartoons of Trump, and Trump's wearing a swastika, right? And he's in a fascist outfit. So, I mean, I respect the guy's freedoms to say what he wants to say or whatever, but it is, he's kind of adding to the fire a bit. But
that's right.
It does seem different, and I agree. I think that's the point. When I would ask people this question, even on the show, you say you think America's heading for a civil war, and they're like, well, I don't really mean armies lining up against each other and going to the battlefield, but I think that's just this other thing. We don't know quite how to describe what is happening.
Right.
But I mean, the other thing, though, I think you mentioned in one of your articles that, I mean, we're here in Europe. Well, I consider UK part of Europe. And not from a Brexit Remain standpoint, just geographically. But we have hard right parties come to the fore. We even in places like Germany, right? We've got them, and we're not talking about the 30s. We're talking about 2025. Even some far left parties. So that hasn't happened. But I thought that was very interesting. The point you made that maybe because the U.S. has such this ensconced two-party system, it's the two parties that are also moving. Wouldn't describe them as far right and far left yet, but certainly they are moving in those kind of directions. So
one thing we are seeing is the ways in which now this is, like you said, it's unlikely to be physical violence, but it's being played out against institutions. So the universities in the US have become, and have been always for a long time, but they've really, and there's lots of, again, very interesting studies about this, how they've become more and more ideologically liberal left.
Right.
And so we're seeing that the kind of Republican Trump are attacking the institutions that are representative of those types of Americans. And we see that again on the other side as well. So I think we're more likely to see this kind of institutional warfare as opposed to anything that involves militias, like you said.
Yeah. Hey, so I dare say, for someone you've picked a good topic to be studying. I think you'll have the day job is pretty secure, I imagine. I mean, what I think you did mention sort of, but maybe give us a little more rundown on what the Network Contagion Research Institute does.
Absolutely. So we are a research institute and think tank based. We're affiliated with Rutgers University, the Social Perception Lab. We have other affiliations at other universities across the States, but we do research into really the relationship between broadly sort of politics and technology and social media. So look at understanding threats, where threat emerges online and how it translates into the real world. We're very interested in following the way people are acting online, and can we use that to predict real world violence? Like, can we really understand? Can we understand what's going on online? And now, as we all know, the internet there's really no escape from it. It's really just become life.
Right.
To what extent are phenomena that are happening online, do they predict kind of what's happening in the real world? And we are seeing a lot of it. We're seeing, everything about Luigi Mangione. We're seeing many other cases. We did a study about the Groypers some time ago. We are seeing these things start online and then percolate down, and then sort of create these permission structures where you see people living online so much that it just becomes their sense of reality.
It's very interesting. And where, if you don't mind me asking, where does your funding come from? And I ask that, and I'm not trying to be confrontational or anything, but just it's, unless someone says, oh, these are, you've already said you're affiliated with Rutgers University. So, I mean, some people say, oh, are they a right wing or are they a left wing think tank or whatever? But how, where does, it strikes me that you're very centrist. Is that fair enough?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would say so. So we're affiliated with Rutgers University. Like, we're very much a kind of social science institution.
Yeah.
That's right.
Kind of like, okay, well, it's great to have come across you. Great to have you on. And all these topics sound very interesting. We'd certainly love to have you on again.
Great.
And yeah, look forward to the follow up you do to the study. I think that will be very interesting as well.
Absolutely.
And just to say a big thank you to Max Horder, the senior fellow at the Network Contagion Research Institute. Do check out his various articles in the Spectator and elsewhere. Do a search, you'll find them, or we'll have links to them in the show notes. And you've got a book, right? Written by the Victors. That will be published in 2027.
Coming out next year.
Yeah, what is that about?
That's right, yeah. So that's about how the invention of literacy changed humanity much for the worse. It's take an understanding about human civilization that you haven't heard before.
Oh,
so
this
really
is very.
This
will be very interesting. Well, do check it out, and just to remind everyone, please like the episode and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, and remember to ring the bell to be notified of future episodes. Thanks for listening to that episode of Factual America, and thank you, Max. Great to have you on, and love to have you on again.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thanks for listening to Factual America. Please subscribe and like us, and share us with friends and family. Find us on YouTube, social media, and factualamerica.com. This is Matthew Sherwood, signing off.